Right now is the perfect time to heal your mind, body, and spirit. But for some, it may be more difficult, as there are those that have experienced unexplained phenomena such as alien abduction and implantation. Many that have experienced this don't have anyone or anything they can turn to for help. Mainstream medical practices will not acknowledge the presence or treatment of these implants. They can be synthetic, holographic, energetic, or etheric. They can block your energy pathways in order to alter your feelings, behaviors, preferences, and limit your potential. Karen Holton has created the Quantum Health Transformation Program and the Alien Implant Remedy. The Alien Implant Remedy is a proprietary blend of essential oils, crystal frequencies, orgone energy, and guided meditation designed to work together to move energy and dissolve the implants. Due to current conditions, supply is limited, so check them out today. These kits provide the right combination of energetic frequencies specifically designed to disable and dissolve energetic implants that may be holding you back. Karen Holton also offers energy and wellness coaching, ascension workshops, Zendome's orgone generators, and spiritual support. Visit KarenHoltonHealthCoach.com or click the link in the description to find out more and get your Alien Implant Remedy today. Welcome back to Forbidden Knowledge News. I'm your host, Chris Matthew. Tonight I want to welcome Susan Martinez. She is a writer, linguist, teacher, paranormal researcher, and recognized authority on the Oahspe Bible with a doctorate in anthropology from Columbia University. She's the author of Delusions in Science and Spirituality, Time of the Quickening, The Lost History of the Little People, The Mysterious Origins of Hybrid Man, and Field Guide to the Spirit World. Susan, welcome. How are you doing tonight?
I'm good.
Very good. I'm glad you're here. We got so much that we could talk about. Tonight, I thought we could tie together some of the theories and some of the things that you've written about, tie it to what's occurring now, and also your work on the spirit world and the ancient past, because I believe there's a lot of connections we could bring together. I also believe that throughout human history, there have been major turning points for humanity. And I think we've reached one of the most critical times in our modern history. And there's a critical spiritual aspect to this that I really think needs to be explored. So my first question for you is, with everything that's going on right now, there is a bigger picture, and there's a picture that most people aren't looking at, and that is what's going on behind our world. What's kind of the driving force behind what's going on right now? And I know you have some thoughts and insights on that, so I thought we'd start there.
Right. You and I think alike. I noticed that.
Yeah, that's very good.
Your use of the term turning point really is the thing. And you must be very perceptive person, because I work pretty hard to make that point with people and they still don't get it. The virus is a sign of a turning point. We're at a turning point. We're not going to go back to the normal that we're looking for. We're going to go forward. Also, when you say the bigger picture, I like that, because I've been talking about adjusting our viewpoint from short term to long term, because we've been spoon-fed the short-term viewpoint, and what we need is the longer term.
Right.
In other words, right now, there's a great deal of darkness surrounding the earth that is breaking up. This is part of the turning point that the accumulation of darkness of this past age is there, but it's there to be broken up. That's what's happening right now. That's why there's so many negatives. But the long-term view tells you that once it's broken up, once it's dissipated and gone, then the light will be coming through. In fact, the prophecies that I deal with point to this as a period of new light.
Now, the prophecies that you speak of, are these derived mainly from the Oahspe Bible?
Well, thank you for saying that, and thank you for pronouncing it right. Thank you for pronouncing it right.
Yeah.
Yes, to a large degree, but the whole point of my work is to kind of get a consensus out of the different systems of prophecy. So the Native American is another one I work with closely. And I draw on the great traditions, the Vedic, the Algonquin, and what am I forgetting? I'm forgetting one. It'll come to me. There's no limit there. I will study whatever prophecies come to mind and see how much light they shed on what's going on right now. It can be tricky. Let me give an example.
Sure.
In the Vedic system, that's of India, they speak of moving out of the Kali Yuga into the Satya Yuga. The Kali Yuga is associated with a lot of the darkness. The Satya Yuga, Satya means truth. So there is a prophecy in the Indian system of the arrivals one day of the Satya Yuga, the age of truth. Now that much I agree with, and I draw on it, but they seem to have that calculated for some time far in the future, and that's where I part company with that system of prophecy, because I say that time is now, that all the prophecies are converging on the present moment, and the figures I'm working with, because it is a mathematical system which happens to be drawn on an ancient Egyptian method, puts 2050 as the target date. Sometimes I call that the bottleneck period, because that's the kind of the birth, the birth pangs. And after 2050, many of the problems will be resolved, and we'll be able to move into the light more effectively.
Now, humanity has, since the beginning of what we would consider as modern humans, have gone through these cycles of, going through darkness and awakening into the light since the dawning of humanity. Isn't that right?
Yes, and I was thinking what a challenge it would be to talk about that with you, because your audience would probably not be familiar with this material, but I'm going to try to introduce it, okay?
Of course, yeah.
Okay, we're talking about cycles, and it was just in my mind before we got on the phone tonight how to say this, but the fact is that working with the mathematics that I have at hand here, these are cycles that are in the prophecy systems I'm talking about. We have, okay, I'm going to say it, and then I'll explain the parts of it, or if you have any particular interest in what I'm saying, stop me and get me to talk about it.
Sure.
Okay, right now, right now in time, we are completing a 3,000-year cycle, and I'd like to get back and talk about that, as well as a 12,000-year cycle, which I would also like to get back and talk about.
Sure.
And in addition, a 24,000-year cycle we are completing, and also a 72,000-year cycle. So the momentous perception that you have about this moment in time is correct, and these are the facts behind it. The 3,000-year cycle, I've been tempted to call the civilization cycle because it seems to have worked out that way in several cases, the Babylonian, the Mongolian. I've done a lot of work on this. Some of it's in most of my books. The system of the numbers here, which do come from an Egyptian system that's 12,000 years old. So the 3,000-year cycle, which is just complete, Moses was in the previous cycle, and now we're starting a new 3,000-year cycle. When you go to the figure of 12,000, for the 12,000-year cycle that's ending now, you have the 6 eras of man. Each of them lasted approximately 12,000 years. The one we have just entered, and when I say just entered, it pretty much means within the last 200 years, is called the 7th era. So these are eras. It's a new era beginning. The 6th era had its own characteristics, and the 7th era will have its own characteristics. Something we might have talked about before when we began speaking was the 24-year cycle. I might have mentioned that that is the one associated with the flood.
The 24,000-year cycle?
Yeah.
Yes.
And the ancient name for the 24,000-year cycle is Gadol, and that word is still alive in the Hebrew language, and it means great. That's Gadol. It connects with the flood, which in the biblical story is Noah's flood, but I have a different version of it. In fact, one of my books is about it. And finally, the most significant one is the 72,000-year cycle. And so this system that I'm working with is nothing like man's science, today's science. It's really totally different. The time frame is totally different. The so-called scientific version of man's life on Earth goes into millions of years, which is not the case as far as my studies has determined. It's a much shorter period of time. In fact, it was 72,000 years ago, according to the system that I follow, that mankind really developed on this planet. And now, 72,000 years later, we're at the halfway point of man's total tenure on Earth. In other words, we only have another 72,000 years to go.
Now, when you say we only have another 72,000 years to go, what does that essentially mean? Will that be the end of humanity?
Yeah. Everything in the material world has a beginning, a middle, and an end. The planet as well.
Very interesting.
The planet as well. And before the planet goes totally cold and dry, humanity will stop propagating. And that is at the next 72,000 year mark. That's the system I follow, and it pretty much sums it up.
Now, during these cycles, they have had major cataclysms that have, wiped out a good portion of humanity during these time periods. Do you think we would see another one of these major cataclysms before within our lifetime, let's say?
Well, as you know, I'm looking at the bottleneck in the year 2050 when we'll finally, get over this period that's going to wreck us for the next 30 years. I have my own fears that a good percentage of humanity will suffer and perish in this period, but I don't know that for sure. But it does look like a major event.
Now, when you say, you feel like many will perish, I also have this feeling that there will be a tribulation period before we can get to somewhat of what some would say a utopian state. I feel like there is going to be a major, I guess you could say, battle of good and evil. We can already see the division amongst the people right now, amongst the the ones that want the country to reopen, the ones that want the country to stay closed, and all the other political and media caused divisions that we're seeing. I'm just wondering if this division will continue along with this awakening process that we're seeing. Will we eventually come together, or are we just going to split as humanity?
Christopher, you're really an enlightened person. Your vocabulary is very similar to mine.
Oh,
your
thank
thinking
you.
is very similar to mine. And what you're saying is just exactly the concepts that I've been putting together lately, ever since the virus began. To respond to what you said, I will say that yes, indeed, I am thinking about and writing about the event that is called the dividing of the way. Okay? And that's what's happening now. The truth is, I don't recall where I got that phrase from, but it's a formulaic phrase. It fits into some system of prophecy. I don't recall which one, but we can find its tracks in you can find it in the Holy Bible with the separation of the sheep from the goats, the wheat from the chaff. And you can find it in other systems. So you were talking a minute ago about good and evil.
Right.
And about tribulation and utopia. These are all my thematic ideas. Let me just say as briefly as I can that the way I'm treating the dividing of the way is as part of prophecy and something that is in reality happening now. You will find that in media, among writers and thinkers, that there's a very often you see the word polarization.
Yes.
That we're polarizing, and that there's a call amidst this polarization. There's this politicians mostly calling for unity. Okay, here's my thoughts on that subject. Unity will come, but it will come only among the like-minded. There's a deep meaning to this dividing of the way. The prophecy that I follow says that the mankind will bifurcate. It will be a bifurcation of mankind according to their beliefs. And I certainly see this happening right now. And I see irreconcilable differences among people. So each will go their own way. And we should not prematurely call for unity, because these are different strains of thought. These are different strains of spirit, and they are destined to go their own way. And so what we are witnessing in our day and time is the dividing of humanity, into two camps, each going its own way in its own civilization. But prophecy tells us that it is the peacemongers, not the warmongers, who will triumph in the end and carry the whole world with them.
Yes, that would, that's something that I feel as well, that there's going to be the peaceful, the group that wants the world to go back to its natural ways. And then we have the more transhuman group that will follow anything the media tells them. They've just been indoctrinated, and they can't seem to shake that. It's been, fed to them their whole lives, so many people. But I do see a lot more people waking up than I ever have before. A lot of my close family and friends that I never thought I would hear saying some of the things that they're saying right now.
Like what?
They're questioning narratives. They're questioning our own government. They're questioning what's really happening right now. My own parents, they stopped watching the news, and they used to be very just conservative, always followed everything the news. I always believed everything the news says. And now they just stop watching it, which is just amazing to me. And I'm seeing this across the board with people. People are protesting now. So this gives me hope that there may be a larger amount of us than them,
Well, that's what makes it a turning point. The Oahspe Bible in particular has a great deal of revelations about cosmic concerns, where the planet is, what regions of space the planet is in right now. So what it is that on a regular basis, the planet moves into the whole solar family moves into regions of intense light, and the light, and it creates a spontaneous level of understanding and of harmony and of determination among people. So that event is called the Quickening.
And we were entering new levels of cosmic energy through the portion of space we're entering.
Exactly. And it's irresistible. It makes, whenever I see things being forced, a community spirit being forced, I back off, because this new light brings spontaneous action. It comes from the ground up. It's no one is forcing it. There's no leader. There's no agenda. There's no, council and agreeing or disagreeing. It's just people spontaneously coming together and forming the community that we so desire. Those are the things that can be happening in the decades to come. And there's a kind of climax around the year 2050.
Now, I'd like you to kind of elaborate on the climax you're talking about in 2050. What is your vision that we may see during that period?
Okay, I have rounded out the year 2048, or 49. There's a certain latitude we got to take there. 2048, 2049. I rounded it out to 2050 because this new era, it has a name. It's called Cosmin. It's spelled with a K, but it reflects the same word, cosmic. It's the new era of cosmic man. Our consciousness, our understanding is going to expand into its rightful place in the time to come. And so the new era is called Cosmin. Its birth year is given as 1848. Okay, this is for the history buffs, but that was quite a year. That was a year, well, let's go 1848, 1849. That was a time when, Marx and Engels wrote the Communist Manifesto that year. In America was the birth of modern spiritualism with the Fox sisters and these things that went on in Hydesville, New York, revealing spirit life, there is no death, revealing the eternal life in spirit. 1848 was the birth of Cosmin. It was year one. In Europe and also in South America, China, really all over the world, there was revolution. It started and steamrolled. It was a, what do they call it? What do they call it? Okay, whatever it's called. A litter of revolutions is what one of the philosophers of the time called it, all over Europe. And because of, they basically failed, but they were just, like an outburst for independence, for freedom. That was 1848. You can read up on it. It was a year of significant change. That was the year also, because of the failed revolutions in places like Germany, that there was heavy migration to America, which is the destined land to commence the new era. There was a significant migration from Europe to America, forming our United States. They had the potato blight in Ireland in 46, and so we had a big rush of Irish immigrants just in time to serve as soldiers for the Union in the next 13 years. Civil War followed year 1848 by 12 or 13 years. Okay, so that just gives a kind of a thumbnail sketch for the year 1848.
Right.
The prophetic numbers involve, for this calculation, the prophetic numbers involve a 200-year unit and a 400-year unit. So the 200-year unit for 1848 is 2048, and that's a significant stopping point. It's a goal. It's a point my group, we're cold faces. It's a point we look forward to as manifesting many of the prophesied events, including the downfall of government and the beginning of man governing himself.
Very good. That is definitely something to look forward to. Now, there's a few.
I thought you'd like that.
Oh yeah. Now, there's a few times we mentioned the Oahspe Bible, and I'm sure a good portion of my audience is not really familiar with that. If they would like to do some more research on it, find out a little bit more about it, could you just give just a brief description about it and what exactly it is?
Let me spell it and break down the word for your listeners so they could follow up on it if they want to.
Yes.
It's spelled Oahspe, Oahspe. And I'm going to break that down into the 3 syllables that it is composed by. the three syllables that compose this word represent the three dwelling places of man. O stands for the canopy of the sky. Ah is the Algonquin word for earth, and Spe is the universal word for spirit. So we have our earth life. After we done with earth life, we go into the sky life, and we transit through from the lower hells to the middle regions, and keep going upward as we learn more. And Spe represents the emancipated heavens, for where the gods and goddesses live, and where eternal life exists. So Oahspe combines all of those in a single word. There's quite a bit online. I don't pay too much attention to what's online, but the best thing a person could do if they're interested in being enlightened is to get a copy of Oahspe and start reading it.
And this was actually a book of channeled information, correct?
Yes, it was planned to occur on the first spell after the birth of Cosmin. Okay, the birth of Cosmin was in 1848. A spell is another prophetic unit of time. It consists of 33 years, and that happens to correspond to what modern science has discovered to be the meteor cycle. Okay, so 1848 plus 33 equals 1881, and that is when the amanuensis of the Oahspe Bible began. An amanuensis was chosen, a man of profound character and spirituality and ability, and his hands were controlled over the newly invented Remington typewriter, and they went like mad. This was automatic writing, only in this case it was automatic typewriting. He was highly clairvoyant and mediumistic, so that he was able to communicate with spirits and they with him. They had instructed him to purify his life, and he did it. And they also instructed him in 1881 to get a big stack of blank paper, and the typing took place every morning, an hour before dawn. 1 hour of automatic typewriting. He was instructed not to read it until the job was complete, and it took almost exactly a year for the typing to be complete. The result is a 900-page Bible, Oahspe. It consists of 750,000 words, so it's lengthy, and it's quite unique as a Bible. It reveals a lot of information about how the heavens of the earth are administered and run by the angels. And well, what else do you want to know?
Well, no, that was a very great description of that, and I just wanted to kind of let the audience know, because we've mentioned it a few times, in case they're interested in more about it, because it is definitely a fascinating book. And I think now is a perfect time to transition into some of the spiritual aspects of what's going on. And I think I want to start with the ones in control, the powers that be. From my research that I can gather, whether it's spirits or some would believe aliens or whatever you want to believe, these elites have been in contact with this other side. And I believe that they have either been taking orders or getting information or something to guide them, to guide humanity in a certain direction. What are your thoughts on that?
My thought is that there, for every power on earth, there's an equivalent power in the spirit world that feeds it, supports it, and inspires it.
Now, that being said, do you think that, you know, the ones that are the negative, I guess you could either say the cabal, whoever's in control on the malevolent side, do you believe that they are working with some malevolent spirits in some way, taking guidance in any way?
Let me tell you that I was, a minute ago, I was describing what the Oahspe Bible is like. Let me mention one more point, and hopefully I'll be able to answer your question. Many of the books in Oahspe, it consists of 33 books within it. It's very extensive. There's revelations on the past, on history, the records of the race. There's a new science revealed. The spirit world is revealed. The history of each of the prophets in turn is revealed. It's amazing. Okay, I'm getting off topic already. What I'm trying to say is that there are several books, many books within Oahspe that have, when you look at the page, there's a horizontal line in the middle of the page. It divides the upper text from the lower text. And in fact, they are called the upper book and the lower book. This is something kind of unique among Bibles, that Oahspe has an upper book and a lower book. The upper book describes what was going on in the heavens of the earth at a particular time. Let's say it was during the time of the prophet Moses. Okay, so the upper book says what was going on in the time of Moses. The lower book tells the history of Moses himself, the earthly history, and the upper and lower book correspond to each other. It's happening at the same time. Okay, that's just kind of a background. But what I want to say is that one of the biggest ways to describe the stuff going on in the upper book of Oahspe is to call it the problems created by the false gods.
Okay.
The false gods. So you see how the wars between the gods, between the good guys and the bad guys in the upper world, so that you get a really good idea of how the false gods have basically took over all the religions of earth and corrupted them. Somehow I feel like I'm answering your question. Am I?
Yes. In a way that I understand what you mean. The false gods that have always been worshipped have always been steering humanity in a certain direction that is not in the best interest of humanity. And when we look at today, I believe that technology, although it is great in many ways, is being used in quite a negative way. And I think there is also, I guess you could call it an occult or spiritual aspect behind some of the things going on with some of the new technology. Would you agree with that?
Wholeheartedly. It's amazing that you've gotten into this, but I'm a writer, so I'm always, whatever catches my interest and I feel needs better understanding, I just automatically start researching it and collecting it and writing what I can about it. And this is what I've done on the topic of technology in the last, I would say 4 years maybe. I've been collecting and writing and collecting and writing. And so far, I mean, Christopher, really, you and I think alike. So far, I found very little support in what I've been trying to say about technology. But I can say this. The utopian vision that we hold, that many people throughout the world hold, and that is truly our destined future, it does not consist of technology, my darling. It consists of walking away from technology and, like I said before, building from the ground up. A term that we faithists use constantly is organic and inorganic, and it helps us express and understand the difference between what you or someone else might call good and evil. Good for us is organic. We seek harmony. It is the main doctrine that us faithists follow. And harmony can really only be achieved in an organic environment. And that is quite literal. It means having your own gardens. It means growing your own food. It means controlling your own community, raising your children in the ways that you believe, not in ways that you've been told to raise them. All of this is the opposite of what technology has been shoving down our throat.
Yes, exactly. And a lot of the new technology has been targeting the younger generations so much that within a short amount of time, we have seen major changes just in the behavior of some of the younger generations, and it's constantly altering. But not only that, we have the unnatural foods that we're being forced to consume. It seems like they're just trying to reduce the amount of natural food that we can have with GMOs. There's no telling what they spray in the air, the water. It seems like on a genetic level, they would love to change us to make us less of natural humans.
Right. And this is not, for people who want to bring a more wholesome lifestyle forward, this is not an optional thing. We can't continue sitting on the fence. And this is a time of choosing. The fact that this is a time of the dividing of the way means that we will all have to choose which way we want to go. And that moment is coming much closer now.
Now, as this progresses, and we have more people awakening, we see the division going on. There's so much uncertainty with people. What is something that, on an individual basis, that the best thing that you can recommend for people to start doing to move this in the right direction? People don't realize how much power they have on an individual basis. Like I said, it gives me hope to see a lot of people starting to stand up and realize this. But where do you think is a good starting point for people?
Okay, I'm glad you used the word power in that sentence, because I will tell you that the formula for the truth formula that for faiths that we use in our religion, and it is a religion. We worship the Great Spirit. The formula, one of the favorite formulas for faiths is a tripartite, and it consists of, here are the things to meditate on: wisdom, love, and power. Those three. There was a lot of New Age stuff over the years that just talked about love. Well, that's fine. Love is fine. But the rest of the formula is missing: wisdom and power. So it's a three-part meditation for every person, every single person, to upgrade himself in wisdom, in love, and in power. Now, I understand that power is the most misunderstood thing, because we are talking now, we're not talking about corruption and people misusing power, or we're not talking about power over other people. Forget all of that. We're talking about the power within, that we have within ourselves. So I'm glad you mentioned it in your sentence, and it made me think of talking to you about wisdom, love, and power. But okay, when you asked me what I would recommend, the first thing that came to mind was work on self. There's nothing that beats that. Work on self. Make yourself a better person. Make yourself a kinder person. Make yourself a more generous person. Make yourself a more sincere person. Purify yourself in whatever ways you're guided to do so. Those are the answers. Those are simple things. Those are all things we're capable of doing. But we're at a point in time where your sincerity really counts. Insincerity really, really has to go.
Yes, I would definitely agree. What you said about starting with yourself, that's what I've always said, because if we are each individual exuding a better person, it's contagious. It seems to make other people want to follow suit, and I do see a lot of that going around. Now, for the last few minutes that we have, I'd love to talk a little bit about some of the other books you wrote. You wrote about hybrid humans and the little people. And for me, I've always, for years now, I've been researching the hidden human history, and I'm convinced that we didn't evolve from monkeys, or not even like modern day science is telling us, at least. I'm torn between if there was interaction from either off planet to genetically modify us. But your view is fascinating, that that we've always been sort of advanced humans, and we've always been intermixing as different species of these more advanced humans, right?
Oh, yes. I wrote the most ambitious book I ever wrote was The Mysterious Origins of Hybrid Man, because the book set out to disprove Darwinism and the entire concept of human evolution. It's a fake. It's a fake, and I'll tell you why. I'll tell you why the powers that be promoted it. They promoted it because it's a racist doctrine. It is a racist doctrine because they rejected the truth, which is that all the races ever did was intermingle, interbreed, and intermarry. And that's what caused the different forms in the fossil record. Darwinism was built up as the system that explained history as an ever-advancing one of races developing by natural selection, by survival of the fittest, blah, 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 and turning into different forms. That never happened, baby. We don't turn into different things. We stay what we are. But the reason there are different forms in the fossil record is because we have interbred consistently all along. And that is what the racist founders of Darwinism and maintainers of Darwinism reject. That because they're racist, they don't want to see any intermingling like that. No less let it account for the entire history of mankind. Oh, the thing is riddled with falsehoods. The dates that they have given are entirely wrong. Man has not been on this planet any more than 80 or 90,000 years, and they've gone into the millions of years. The book takes all of these issues and examines them scientifically and looks at the evidence, and that's what is going on in my book, The Mysterious Origin of Hybrid Man. We're hybrids. We came from mixing, and we are continually mixing, and the future of the race is to be totally blended, and that's really going to happen big time in Cosmon. It's happening right now. Those statistics are very dramatic. The blending of the races.
No, that's very
Of
interesting.
ethnic groups.
And you also have written about giants, something else that mainstream narrative wants to kind of sweep under the rug and hide. And I know they've destroyed evidence of bones of giants. First, why do you think they wouldn't want us to know about giants? And I have a second question. Were the giants, they have stories that they were malevolent, cannibalistic, that they were sons of angels. What are your thoughts overall on giants?
Um, To answer that, Christopher, I really have to say you must read my book. I'm not going to answer it. It requires a study. It's nothing I could say to you in a minute or 5 minutes where you would be enlightened. But I can say that there have been giants on Earth. There were periods in the past when they were predominant. There were periods when they were warriors. It was the little people who were the priests and the peaceful ones, and the founders of religion on Earth, the little people. Yeah, there were giants, and honestly, I don't know why the powers that be would want to deny it, except for the fact that they can't explain it, and it would contradict their theory of evolution.
Now, based on some of your research, how tall were these giants? And then we'll go to the little people and how small they were.
Oahspe gives those facts, and it indicates a race of large. Oh, for example, the prophet. What comes to mind is the prophet Zarathustra, and that was 9,000 years ago. He was the first prophet, and that was in the Persian lands. It was the first codified religion of man, and the first Bible was given in his time. Zarathustra was 9 feet tall.
9 feet tall.
So right there you have a model of the giant race.
Now, when we go to some of the little people, what is the smallest that you've come across in your research?
Oh, I wrote a book on the little people because it was a very neglected subject, and it was so much fun writing it and putting all the research together. They started out as a race of 3 foot tall men and women, perfectly proportioned. We're not talking about dwarfs. We're not talking about dwarfism. perfectly proportioned and actually quite beautiful. They were molded in a divine kind of way. They did it's the little people who do it's the little people who answer to your question about DNA coming from other worlds, and that was the case with the little people. And again, I'm not going to go beyond explaining that beyond what I just said, but I will give the title of that book. It's called The Lost History of the Little People.
Yes, very fascinating. Now, if people want to find your books, what is the best place? Is it Inner Traditions?
Right, Amazon, or wherever they usually get books.
Now, for the last few minutes that we have, we talked about this period of 2050, and this is the time to really look forward to. What is your overall vision of how things should be during that time period, being there that we can overthrow government and the false monetary system and all these things that we abide by now that are just part of just a false matrix?
I would say the first thing is to monitor self, like I was saying before. And I would say each person is capable of stopping clinging to falsehoods. We know within ourselves, not that we would admit it to anyone else, but we know within ourselves when we're clinging to something wrong. Let's get rid of that. And the next move is to align yourself in some significant way with like-minded people. In other words, working on projects or doing things together, hands-on type stuff. Find like-minded people and get with it. I don't know. I think this is, let me say this is truth time. It has arrived. We have arrived at truth time. Don't the Indians call it Satya Yuga? That's the age of truth. If you want to be with it, if you want to carve out your future for this life and the next one, go with truth and give up the BS. Give it up.
I agree. And I agree collectively that we have great powers. We have great powers to shape our own future and make it that utopian like future that we deserve as humans, that we've always deserved.
Right.
Susan, thank you so much for coming on. That was fantastic information, and we still have so much more we could talk about, so I'll have to have you back on.
Let's do it.
All right, sounds good. Well, thank you so much again, and you enjoy the rest of your night.
Okay, you do the same. You're a doll, and I'm gonna be talking to you real soon.
Very good. Well, thank you so much.
Take care now.